Module 7, Digital Curriculum. Hi, this is Dr. Davis, and here we are again together with another podcast looking at the digital curriculum this week. And basically we're looking at how technology is impacting the way curriculum is delivered to students and how it can, in many cases, increase our effectiveness in the classroom. I've maintained for many years that technology cannot make a poor teacher into a great teacher, but technology can make a good teacher into an exceptional teacher. But it also can take a poor teacher and make them absolutely awful. It doesn't make up for one's ability. It only enhances what you have. So if you don't have much talent in the classroom, it's going to enhance that and make it obvious to everyone. So this week we're looking at how technology can have an impact on curriculum and talk about some of the issues related to that. We live in the 21st century. We've got to understand that technology is a part of our daily lives. Not saying that we can live without it or that we have to use it for that matter. Those are two extremes, living without it versus not being able to do anything without it. But what I am saying is we're going to take what I believe to be a deep look at what is the proper role for technology in the classroom as it relates to how we deliver the curriculum. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to begin with some guiding questions, and that first question I think is very interesting for us because the class you're taking is an online class. So when we ask what is online learning, you have to be able to answer that from personal perspective, I think, and you have the ability to do that. So we're going to look at online learning and how it relates to curriculum. Secondly, we're going to look at what does effective online learning look like. I hope that you'll answer that this class has been an effective class. I have kind of a personal interest in the answer to that question, the second one. And the third question is, in what ways can the Internet benefit classrooms? How does the Internet become part of the curriculum in a classroom? So that's what we're going to be looking at this week and in this module. Here's a hypothetical question for you. What would you do if you received a pile of money? I mean a big pile of money. Let's say you received $150,000 as a part of a grant, and you had to spend it on technology. What would you spend it on? Would you spend it on a technology retrofit where you went through all of your schools, or maybe just your school? Let's say that you were the principal of the school and that $150,000 was yours. How would you use it at your school? Would it be let's replace all of the old technology and give ourselves a 21st century upgrade? Would you update the infrastructure at your school so that you could handle more Wi-Fi hotspots? Would you provide technology to all the students, which has become so popular today? Is it a one-to-one kind of thing? And then do you provide the professional development for teachers? How do you spend that kind of money? Because you see, technology is available there for us. Maybe we don't get $150,000, but technology is out there, and we have to consider what is its proper role in the classroom, and especially with the delivery of the curriculum. Because when you look at this slide here, you can see many devices that enhance how we communicate the course content to our students. You've got laptops, so therefore there's research, and you can't have an LCD projector without a laptop. It won't do you any good. Of course, you've got the Promethean board there, which are very popular and I think excellent tools to use in the classroom. Allows the kids to engage because kids love technology, and putting them up in front of a Promethean board is an awesome way to connect them to what's going on. Then, of course, you've got the document camera there, which gives you a chance to use some old resources that are still valuable, but it gives you a chance to display them to the entire class. So again, the overarching question here is, where does technology fit in the scheme of things in a school? Does it have a place? I think many of us would agree that it does, because this is the world that our kids are going into, and our responsibility is to prepare them for the world they're going into, not the world that we came from. So there is a place, but identifying that place is really important. And I think you would find that in many schools there's a continuum of those teachers who use technology minimally because they just don't see that it does really any good, or they're not that qualified to use it, so they don't want to use it. They like how they do things. They've always done things a certain way, and technology can't help them do that, so they leave it to the side. Whereas you have other teachers who are at the other end of the spectrum, who everything is a technology opportunity, and they use it to the utmost. But most teachers fall somewhere between those two extremes. So that's kind of what sets this lesson apart, this module apart from others, as we try to chart where that is. And you as a leader will have to make a decision what is the appropriate place for technology in your school, and then how to bring those teachers along who are kind of resistant to using it in the classroom, and then how to encourage those that are at the other end of the spectrum to keep going, keep finding ways, because they're going to annoy you just as much as those who aren't using technology, because they're the ones saying, we need this, I need this software. And you're saying, well, there's no money for it, no budget for it. And so they're frustrated. And then you're on the other end, you're trying to get the teacher just to use a PowerPoint presentation or to find something on the internet and bring it to the classroom. So you have oftentimes those two competing extremes that can make your life a little bit more miserable. So you have to chart the philosophical course for where this is and bring everybody along as you can. There is no doubt that the world is changing, especially the world of the classroom. It is much different than the world we were in when we were students in an elementary classroom. Technology is far more prevalent in every aspect of our life, as well as every aspect of how we educate. And it is our responsibility to prepare children for that kind of world. Former President Barack Obama once said, a child born in Dallas is now competing with a child born in New Delhi. And his point there is that we live in such a globally connected world, a global economy, that yes, it's true that when companies are looking for new staff, they're not just looking within the United States for those people. They're looking from around the world, because people are far more mobile today than they once were. And so companies that have access to employees in other parts of the world are often looking there for the best and the brightest. And not always are the best and the brightest and the most technological student found here in the United States. They're found in other countries. So what has happened then is technology has made the world flat. And just think about how much now we depend on technology, and how much technology has brought the world together. In my own life, whenever I've had problems with my home cable TV and I call their customer service, more times than not, I am redirected through the telephone computer to a customer service agent who is in the Philippines. Comcast hires these call center people in the Philippines, and they handle your calls when it's not convenient here to call. For instance, if it's after closing time here, you can get a tech person in the Philippines, because it's a 12 or a 13-hour time difference. So that's not unusual. And technology has made it possible for us to do that. With all those satellites orbiting overhead, they make it easy to connect with these people. And even though you're dialing a local number, your number is being routed through a computer and through an international telephone line to someone on the other side of the world. So technology has really made it easier for us to do things that once were more complicated to do. Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind, asks 3 important questions that I think underscore the idea that the world is changing. The first question is, can someone overseas do it cheaper? Many companies are hiring overseas workers not to come to the United States, but to stay in their home country but do the work. H&R Block still uses Indian accountants to handle the easier tax returns. And they will upload them to their computer at night, and then the Indian accountant will download them because it's daytime there, and work on them and get them all reviewed, entered, and all the stuff that has to happen to prepare a tax return. Then he will upload it to his computer, and then when it gets morning time here in the United States, the agent here will download it and print it and have it all ready for you to sign. And it may take no more than 2 days for that to happen. And what it does is it allows H&R Block to maximize their tax force, because tax season is a very busy time. And they can't always find enough tax preparers here in the States. Also, it's cheaper to hire someone in Asia to do that very same work that you would have to pay more for. So his first premise is technology has made it possible for us to find those workers overseas who are willing to work cheaper than Americans are, but still get paid a good wage. Second question that Daniel Pink addresses in his book is, can a computer do it faster? There are many things that we used to do by hand that we no longer do by hand because we have smart calculators, we have smartphones, and we have computers. And if a computer can do it faster, then why would you do it any other way? So there are cases where computers are replacing human beings. And that's no more obvious than in the automotive industry. Just look at the number of robots that are building cars and painting cars. And while the person, a human being painting a car, may do a better job of it, take more care over it, the computer can do just as great of a job. The robot, which is basically just a large computer, can do it faster and work longer hours without taking any breaks. Second big premise that supports this idea that the world is changing is computers are able to do things faster than human beings. And so therefore we've got to look at how do I find my place in the world when there are computers who can do what I do faster. Finally, the last question he asks is, what is it that I'm offering that's in demand in the world? What skills do I have that the world needs? And he, of course, says that we've got to look at how the world is changing, what the world needs, and then find those skills so that I have something that somebody wants. I mean, that's the whole premise of work anyway, is that I trade my skill for something somebody wants. Somebody wants to learn how to be a school leader, so I trade my work with Troy University so that you learn the skill of leadership. Could you learn this on your own? Probably. I mean, it would be difficult to maybe resource some of these concepts and find it could be done. Of course, there is a certification piece there that might be hard to do. So you see, when we recognize what it is the world wants, if we have those skills, then we become somebody in demand. And right now, technology is something that the world wants. Now, keep in mind that technology has made it possible for there to be a competition between East and West. That's why I said the whole idea of the world is flat by Thomas Friedman. He wrote the book, The World is Flat. And he talks about those forces that are causing the world to be flat, technology being one of them. And the underscored idea of Friedman's book is that there are greater opportunities for competition, and because of competition, there are new vistas that we can explore. So, look at the new literacies that are required, the new skill sets that people have to have. So people need to be technologically literate. They need to know how computers work. Secondly, they need to know how to solve problems, which means they need to be able to think critically about problems and develop solutions to those problems. Creative is another skill set, and you wouldn't necessarily think that creativity is a skill, but it is. It is something that we can help inspire in people as a part of our instruction. How to communicate with other people. And that not only means learning a foreign language, but it also means being able to talk with people in a respectful tone so that both of you understand where the other person is coming from. Not only being able to get your ideas across, but to understand other people's ideas. Another literacy that's desperate today is the ability or the skill to develop relationships. That's to network, to get along with people who have a different culture, who have a different view on life. That's going to become increasingly important as you get out into the world, and as your students get out into the world and they start joining companies that have locations outside the United States. Not everybody sees the world the same. For instance, not everybody has the same thing for breakfast. I've noticed that as I've traveled over the years, that breakfast means a lot of different things to different people. And where I might think it's necessary to have bacon and eggs and grits or sausage and coffee or a Danish and cereal or something like that, someone in Japan may see it completely different and see it as a time when you're going to have fish, you're going to have sushi, you're going to have something else. So we all have different perspectives, and that difference is something that can be the foundation for a neat relationship. Lastly, we need to know how to share information from one part of the world to the other. And I think social media has made that possible. I mean, I'm communicating with people in the Philippines all the time, in Korea as well, all the time. And technology has made that possible to communicate with them, for me to send presentations to the Philippines and have them played while I'm here in the United States. I've recorded a presentation with video and audio, and people there can sit and watch my presentation while I'm sitting here in the United States. So, and it could happen the opposite way. They send information here. Those are skill sets. How you do that is important, and it's, again, something that people are going to demand more and more of. Because of these new literacies, we're also going to need to have new kinds of classrooms where technology is a central part of the classroom environment. These classrooms have an abundance of technology. That means that school districts and principals of schools are going to have to look for ways to bring technology into the classroom that doesn't just sit there in a cart, but that is used on a daily basis. That it becomes the way we access the curriculum. And that everybody has their laptop out and they are engaged in what's going on right there on the screen. We also are going to have teachers who are comfortable using technology. And right now, I would say that is not the case. Probably less than half of the teachers that are currently teaching are truly comfortable using technology every day and for the majority of the day. Most teachers, from what I've observed, and again, it's just my little observation, they take things that they used to use that maybe were paper and pencil things, and they've just put them on the on their computer, and they've displayed it on a screen. They've basically just doing the same thing they did before, but they're using a new modality, and that's the computer. What we need is teachers who are doing new things using the technology. The third thing that has to happen in the classroom is we need curriculum that's designed for this technology-rich environment. Right now, I would say curriculum is not designed for this. It's designed for a teacher to sit in front of the room, lecture, and then students to do homework. And that's because we're not seeing the curriculum accessing the internet like it needs to, and making the internet part of the curriculum. It's too textbook based, and that's where I think we're going to see a new change, is to see curriculum shaped so that it can take advantage of all the technology in the classroom and the technology outside the classroom, through the internet, through connecting with people in other countries. But that's also going to mean that schools are going to have to ramp up their hardware so that they can take advantage of the curriculum. Lastly, I think we're going to see a different type of learning environment where classrooms are going to be online, that we're going to offer blended instruction and mobile learning. I mean, what is the point for a person to come into the classroom anymore? Can't they take a class online in high school? Is there a reason why they couldn't? I don't know. I'm not in a high school today, but I think that if I can do it at the university and you're watching this presentation, you're listening to me teach, you've got the textbook, you've got the assignments, why couldn't you learn the concepts in high school this way? Could I do a daily homework assignment? I sure could. And could I have you turn it in? Yep, and I could give you feedback on it. And I could even provide online resources through Khan Academy and other sources out there to help you get things that you don't understand. It is possible. And I think it's going to become more and more common as schools start to explore the use of online learning. Now, we see it with Access Alabama, but that's just a tiny percentage of the educational day. But I do think that in years to come, it's going to only increase, so that students are not going, and I'm thinking high school predominantly is where our next foray into this is going to be. I don't see it in elementary just yet. But I do see that high school students are going to come out to that building certain times of the day or so many times a week for things to happen, but the rest of the time they are learning online. I know it's radical, and I know most of you may just be shaking your head thinking Dr. Davis is crazy. He has finally gone over the edge. All I can say is what I see out there as I visit schools, as I talk to people, especially in Asia. We're seeing this now in places like Singapore and in some of the large cities of countries like in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. They have these kinds of opportunities for students. I think they're only going to increase as the technology improves, as more people get access to it. They're going to ask the question, why do I need to come to a place to learn? Not just because I like to. They're asking the question, why do I need to? The world is changing. We better get ready for some of these changes. Now, they may not come for 10 or 20 years. I kind of suspect that they're going to come a little faster than that, but we have to be prepared for how the classroom needs to change in order for us to take advantage of the technology and the way the world is changing. Some of the current trends in digital learning deal with online learning. And one of the reasons that online learning is taking off, especially at the university, post-secondary level of education, is because it allows for expanded opportunities where you don't have to go 45 miles to the Troy campus to take that one class that you need. It's only offered at one place. You don't have to drive there when we can offer it in an online format. We can also offer maybe smaller classes or more unique programs when we make them online, because again we have a broader audience from other places that could take those classes. So it certainly increases access to courses and to course content, because you can bring highly qualified professors to teach these classes and they can benefit from it. One professor can teach 25 students or 30 students who may not all be in the same area. So if you have a small number, you can kind of put the numbers together. And this is even true at the secondary level with access, where you can have maybe 2 students taking a French class, and those 2 students are combined with 5 students or 7 students at 2 other schools to make a full class. So that access is an advantage of online learning. Of course, flexible scheduling is one thing. Because it's online, people can connect to the material at any time of the day. They're not locked into a particular time, or in this case, a particular place. Flexible scheduling makes it great, especially if you are running out of room in a school classroom. This would allow you to increase offerings and not have to build buildings or add portable buildings to it. This also helps students who are at risk, who might be at risk of dropping out because we've got a pregnancy involved. They can study at home and not have to be in a classroom. It's great for credit recovery. Those students who have failed, instead of having a summer school where you're paying people to come in, and right now many schools do this anyway. They have credit recovery where students come to campus during the summer months and sit with a teacher, but they work online. It's not that the teacher's teaching them. It's that the teacher's there just to monitor the room, but they're doing their credit recovery online. Well, why not do that throughout the school year? What makes online possible, though, is those learning management systems. And Blackboard, which is what we use at Troy University, although we are changing from Blackboard to Canvas, is a learning management system. It provides a framework for us to create an online class. And the administration of the class is controlled by the university. There's one location that controls all of it, which makes it great. So there's uniformity of look for the class and the uniformity of how the classes are set up. And these learning management systems make it possible for the university or the school to deliver the learning content. Just like Access makes it possible for K-12 schools to deliver that, or secondary schools to deliver that content, Blackboard and others like it make it possible. But it also allows us to personalize the material for our university. So logos are there and colors are there, and we have a look that is Troy, so that you go from class to class to class, the look is basically the same. So the e-learning dimensions then, and we're looking more digitally here, bring up some issues that we've got to think about as we look at online learning, as we look at digital learning and the digital curriculum, really, for that matter. We've got to think about comprehensiveness. How many courses are going to be offered in an online format, in an e-learning format? We offer in this program all of the reduced hour program is completely offered online, because you already have a master's degree, so all you're taking is 5 courses and 2 practicum experiences, It's all online. So anybody from the southern third of the state of Alabama can connect to our program through that online open. So it's comprehensive from that standpoint. Secondly, the reach of the program. E-learning really changes the definition of what is local. When you think about students, it's not just the students who live in the town where the school's located, but we could be talking about students from around the region. And I had a class with a student several years ago when I was teaching an education course as an adjunct. I had students who were in Virginia, and I had a student who was in Japan. They were both taking the same course. I was communicating with them as if they were in the same room, but they were on opposite sides of the world. So it really changes how we think about what's considered a local student. The delivery also is an issue that comes up. Are we talking about asynchronous or synchronous learning? Is it happening right at the moment, or are people accessing the information and posting it at another time? Basically, is it live or is it not live? Also, we have to think about how we deliver the material. Are we going to do it face-to-face? Or are we going to do some kind of blended, where we have some face-to-face, some online? Now, when you talk to students in colleges and universities, they seem to like the blended classroom, because they still want that face-to-face instruction with some online learning as well. But that's because they are still, for the most part, digital immigrants. They're not natives to this. The native is someone who grew up with technology, and especially digital technology. But for most of us, we're still the digital immigrant. We were born in a time where computers were not that common in the classroom. And so for us, we still like the security of seeing that instructor's face and hearing him or her teach that content. But we like the convenience of online, but we also need that security of that face-to-face. So these are just some of the current trends and or issues that are showing up with digital curriculum. A recent trend in digital learning has become almost the standard for what we see in that online learning venue, which is the blended learning model. A blended model is where we take face-to-face instruction, often called traditional, and match it with an online component. And because we're at the earliest stages of this digital learning environment, we're finding that schools are not necessarily wanting to take that rather courageous jump into full-blown online learning, and so they take kind of a half step, which is a combination of the two. And of course there are obvious advantages. Many of the students are digital immigrants, as I've said. They weren't born in an environment where technology had such a vast control over one's life, and so that for them learning still requires that personal touch, that face of a teacher, and being in a classroom rather than being at home and accessing the classroom electronically. And so we see these blended models as kind of the next best step to a full-blown e-learning environment. And there are several ways that this is accomplished, and I've listed them here on this slide so that you could see that we start with the face-to-face driver. That's at one end of the spectrum, and of course you see the online driver at the other. So a face-to-face driver is that where we take online content and we deliver it face-to-face in the classroom. Now, I'm not saying that this is very common, and I cannot really see how this is a true blending of learning, because it seems to me that who's bringing that face-to-face content to the classroom? Or basically what we're doing is we're just sitting in a computer lab and we're watching a talking head. I suppose that might be another way face-to-face drivers are accomplished. But like I said, it is not the most common. Then there is the rotation, where that most of the instruction is in that traditional classroom setting, and then students rotate to computers for individualized instruction. So that would be a case where if you had a series of a set of computers in your classroom, not necessarily one for every student, but that you would give whole group instruction in the classroom, and then students would go to the computers for an individualized instructional period. There is a flex type of learning where small groups are supported by the teacher, and online learning is added to that as it is needed. So basically the instruction is still face-to-face, but there is some flexible online instruction they can access, maybe during a study hall, maybe even during a computer class time or at home. The online lab is also becoming a very popular way the blended learning model works. In this model, or in this feature of it, teachers deliver content solely online from a remote location, and then the classroom is supervised by paraprofessionals. You will see this in many cases where we have the Access Alabama courses taking place, where there oftentimes the teacher may not be at the school where the students are, and they go to a room. There is a paraprofessional in the room to supervise, to help maybe answer questions, but the teacher is teaching from a remote location. And that probably is the next most popular or common way of implementing a blended learning model. The most common way is what's called a self-blend, and that is a combination of online and traditional learning. The online instruction is always remote, and so that it's not something where the teacher is in the same room with the students. It is much like what we see with Blackboard and how I do a Blackboard course. The only difference is in my Blackboard courses, we don't have the face-to-face component. And several of my professor colleagues at the university use a blended model. The university sets a stipulation of how much time has to be face-to-face and how much can be online, but then they decide how many weeks they're going to do in the online environment and how many will be face-to-face. So instead of it being 1 week face-to-face, 1 week online, they may do 3 face-to-face weeks, and then they'll have a week of online, or 2 weeks of online and 1 week of face-to-face. Depends on just how their schedule is laid out. There is the online driver where all the content delivered is online, and that probably is the most closely related to a Blackboard course that we have. So are there any benefits to a blended learning model? Well, certainly the flexibility is the main benefit to the student, probably even to the teacher for that matter. And then there is the convenience. Students can access material at their pleasure when they have time or when their schedule best allows it. Now, there are some challenges with a blended model. In other words, the teacher who is teaching in this model has to understand how to teach not only in a traditional environment, because remember, blended is supposed to be a combination of face-to-face and online. So the teacher has to be effective both in the classroom with students present, and they have to be an effective teacher in that online environment. And they're not similar. You use very different skills when you're teaching online versus when you're teaching face-to-face. And another challenge is the technology itself can be a challenge, because you really need to use the technology to enhance the instruction, not drive it. So we've looked for ways to bring technology into the environment, so video and audio and things like that. Maybe even as I've done with some WebEx things, that make it a little bit more user friendly, a little more engaging. So blended learning certainly has benefits, also has some pretty significant challenges, and it's going to become the model for right now. I mean, I know there are lots of online learning opportunities, and some universities have gone straight to the online and not done blended. I think at the secondary level, we'll probably see more of this blended as we get students used to learning face-to-face, learning in an online environment. I think we're going to have this little bit of a bridge. But in time, I can see that it's going to be straight e-learning even in the secondary level. Well, looking at mobile learning as one of the current trends in a digital learning environment, here's what we're seeing, is that there is still a significant number of students who use a laptop or a desktop for their access to the internet or access to digital curriculum. But here's what we're finding. There is a growing trend for students to be using their mobile device, their iPad, their tablet, their cell phone, to connect to the curriculum. And so these mobile devices are becoming the conduit for the curriculum. And there are so many applications out there that can be on a phone, on a tablet, on an iPad, that can be used to support the classroom instruction. Kahoot is one that some teachers are using, and students can access testing and review sessions with their cell phone. And that's just one app. And there are hundreds and thousands of others that teachers are using in combination with these mobile environments. And since we're just talking about the United States, we're seeing this move towards the cell phone because it's something that everybody has. They're all smartphones now, and they do so much more than just take calls and text and send messages and take pictures. So they're becoming more popular. Looking at a recent Speak Up survey, which looks at technology usage and trends in the United States. This is the 2010. I have not seen a more recent survey of this, but notice these statistics. 75% of teachers say that mobile devices enhance student learning. This is their perception. 65% of teachers say that mobile devices increase interactive communication because you have the Remind 101 texts going out to everybody. There's no longer an excuse for parents not to know what's going on because they got a cell phone and it can send the word right to them. 65% of teachers believe that it increases flexibility in accessing literary works. So, of course, you don't need to have that heavy, cumbersome textbook anymore. But this is a statistic that I thought interesting of these, or certainly it is telling, which is 85% of administrators believe that mobile devices enhance student learning. And 65% of administrators say that it increases the scope of the learning environment. So we're seeing that these teachers and administrators are beginning to say this may be our way to connect to curriculum. And then finally, 65% of administrators believe that it meets educational needs of the individual. So to me, with these kinds of statistics, it's not going to be too many more years to where mobile devices are going to be the norm in schools. Already, we're not buying these big laptops, and I call them, they're not that big, but buying laptops. We're going to the Chromebooks. They're smaller. We had iPads, but now we're going to those Chromebooks because they're a little bit smaller and easier to manage. So I would not be surprised that this is going to be the trend. Well, what is it that parents and students really want? They want and demand that schools allow for mobile devices in the classroom. And they want to be able to use them on a regular basis as a part of the learning process. They don't understand why these devices have been banned from the classroom. Oh, yes, I know it's distracting and kids are paying attention to their cell phone and not to the teacher. Well, maybe if the teacher was more engaging, the students would pay more attention to him or her. So there is an increased demand for these on the part of the students and the parents. Now, from the teacher and administrator perspective, what they want is they want safe and meaningful usage of these devices, because their concern is that students are accessing things that are inappropriate to access, and so there is a safety concern on part of the administrators and the teachers, and how to provide that environment where kids are not going to bully kids in a cyber format, or they're going to send inappropriate pictures along those lines. So these are two very interesting perspectives on mobile devices in the classroom. But I think they're not far apart. I don't see that these are insurmountable issues that we cannot meet. So I think just be on the lookout for more and more devices and more programs for these devices that would relate to the classroom in the near future. Computer-based assessments are really nothing new to teachers. What we're seeing with them now is they're not so much the IQ testing and diagnostic testing that they once were, but they're now more of that achievement testing. Of course, the Aspire testing that the kids are taking even right now is computerized. The test that you take to finish this program, the Praxis 2 exam, is online. And the reason that these tests have gone to this online format, of course, is because it's an effective way to collect data, to gather the data that we need. And so we're going to see more and more assessments that are based solely on the computer itself. And the technology is going to enable us to gather relevant data that can help us to make both formative and summative decisions, which will result in more meaningful instruction. The other thing that these computerized assessments are going to help us do is it's going to help us to personalize the instruction, to differentiate what students need to have. I like that because I think every child should have an IEP. Why not? Why shouldn't we be teaching the individual instead of teaching to the group? And so certainly individualizing instruction is a good thing, and technology is going to make that possible. Now, I know there's a great deal of fear, because there are people out there who say, yep, these computers are going to eliminate the need for teachers. I don't believe that. I believe we're always going to need teachers. But the amount of teaching they do may change. The way they teach must change. They're going to be more of a facilitator, and the technology is going to take on the weight of instruction. And some of the mundane facets of instruction will be covered by the computer. I have been looking at many of these educational videos that are produced by Khan Academy, and I'll tell you, not having been in an elementary school in 40 plus years, I really appreciate those little videos. because there the guy shows me how to work through a problem that my daughter's doing that, I've forgotten kind of how we did it differently 40 years ago than the kids do today. So watching Khan Academy shows me how they're doing it today. I can see it, I can understand it. And then I can help my daughter with something that she doesn't understand. I think that's going to become the norm, not the exception, as it is now. We're going to have to face the fear that these devices are not going to take someone's job away from them. What they're going to do is enhance their job. It's going to enhance their ability to teach, not supplant it. Are you familiar with open educational resources? These are free resources that are out on the internet that you can use in your classes to teach content. They have no copyrights on them, and you can duplicate the materials and use them for free. And they're very high quality tools. Look for those out there. I would just encourage you, type in your browser open educational resources and see what comes up, because you can see these materials out there that have been produced for free to be used for free. And of course, that's one of the reasons that teachers like them, because they are at no charge. They're legal resource. In other words, they're not pirated material, and there's a big push on not using pirated material. There's no copyright on it, and what makes it even more valuable is that you can modify it. It is not in a format where you just have to take it as it is. You can take it, modify it, and then share or post with anybody out there. Of course, the idea behind open resources was that it was supposed to increase access to materials for education from around the world. Not just stuff that was developed here in the United States, but stuff that was developed overseas that we might want to use. It is a real benefit for third world countries for certain, because they don't have the funding to buy these materials, but can get them online. And even teachers here in the United States are beginning to see these open educational resources as a way to supplement their own curriculum. It does require that you take time to have to search them out. Oftentimes it's not easy to find exactly what you need. You do have to do a lot of hunting for them. But they are beneficial to the classroom teacher because they can be customized to your specific needs. Now, some textbook companies, I'm sure, are providing resources like this. They might even call them open resources. But if your textbook company does not provide them, then you certainly should Google this. This is going to become even more common as people produce materials and post them on the internet. Anybody can be an author with the internet out there. There's so many ebooks that people are writing. They don't have to go through a publisher. All they have to do is find a website where they can post their materials. And many teachers already have their own personal website with materials that they use in their classroom and then produce for other people to use as well. So this is one to just be adding to your list of things to watch for open educational resources, because they are going to become more and more common. Have you heard the term digital citizenship? Well, it means the ability to evaluate and use technologies appropriately, behave in a socially acceptable or responsible way within an online community, and develop a healthy understanding of the issues surrounding online privacy and safety. As we are moving more and more towards a digital world, this idea of digital citizenship is becoming more important. We must teach our children how to function in an online world. And what are the norms that govern that world? What is the appropriate behavior in that world? And so this is a conversation that is going on right now as we are looking at how do we provide and promote a safe internet experience. The government provides a great deal of resources for infrastructure and for curriculum initiatives that are related to, safe access to the internet. There certainly are laws, the CIPA law, the Children's Internet Protection Act, which describes how schools must protect their students when they're online. They have to have filters that block harmful content. They also are supposed to be teaching internet safety. It is a different world now than when we were kids. There are new forces shaping the classroom and what goes on in the classroom. Curriculum is going to have to respond to these issues. We are already seeing that many textbook companies are providing e-books instead of the paper copies of the books, or they're producing e-textbooks in addition to the paper copy. As a matter of fact, I was talking with a student just the other day, and he was saying that at his school, they don't have an option that for every e-book that they get, they have to have a paper copy. And then it was made clear to me that that's because every school is supposed to have one paper copy to back up the e-book that they have, again, to show that they purchased it and didn't steal it. It's not uncommon for a school to, and they shouldn't do this, this is terribly illegal, and it will cost them a great deal if the textbook company ever finds out about it. But there are some schools that will do a PDF of a textbook that they've purchased and not purchase the other copies that they need for the number of books that they're buying. Of course, that, like I said, that is illegal. It's a violation of the company's the copyright policy, but it is happening. I think that you're going to see more and more digital resources that come with your course textbooks than ever before. Eventually, we're going to see the curriculum become a digital device. It is not a tool. It's not going to be a paper curriculum. It's not going to be a binder. It's going to include resources that are predominantly found on the internet, not necessarily in books. Now, I'm not saying that day is here right now. I am thinking that it's going to be a while, but that seems to be the direction, because our kids are so much more technologically savvy these days. It used to be that if you needed your VCR programmed, you had to get a kid to come do it, because adults couldn't do it. I'm thinking that that's only going to become more the case. That our kids are going to drive the way the curriculum is shaped, and they're going to start demanding that more and more of the curriculum include these digital experiences. So we're not there yet, but I think that that's something that we can anticipate. Well, I hope you have a great week. That kind of really wraps up what I wanted to say today about the digital learning environments and how that is impacting curriculum. I think like I said, we don't know what it's going to look like. We can just almost assume that there are going to be some big changes as more and more schools get those digital devices. So, with that in mind, we'll bring it to a close here. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and as always, just contact me if you have any questions or comments. Have a great week. Thanks. Bye-bye.